Interesting perspective on getting the bird's eye view of BFSI post-COVID-19. And for this, we will have two of our speakers joining in. One, of course, being Dinesh Kumar Khara, who is the chairman, State Bank of India. And spearheading this fireside chat, we have R. Sriram, who is the associate editor, The Economic Times. So that's going to be our first session. But I do believe we still have a couple of minutes. I'm going to take one more minute once again to reiterate all the attendees who have joined us in. Please do ensure you're taking a good look at all the sessions that are in store for you, and also making the most of this edition of the program, of the event. Again, let me remind you, we do have interesting vouchers from Amazon worth up to 2 lakhs. So please do visit the booths, the photo booth as well. Click your picture. Please do also visit our partner booths, connect with them, with these booth reps as well. And I'll keep coming back and forth to share all these details and more. So with that, let's have an enriching start to this program, and let's get it started with our first session on getting a bird's eye view of the BFSI post-COVID-19. Once again, let me inform you, our first speaker being Mr. Dinesh Kumar Khara, who's the chairman of State Bank of India. And this fireside chat is spearheaded by R. Sriram, associate editor, The Economic Times. So on that note, here we go.
Good afternoon, Mr. Khara. Very warm and hearty welcome to you to this very significant and important ET event. We are here to talk about the BFSI sector and the challenges and the potential, and what are the kind of changes that have taken place in the last 6-8 months ever since the lockdown began and the pandemic began, and what lies ahead in the future, not just for big banks like SBI, but also for the smaller players who are entering, especially also the NBFC sector. So if I could just start, Mr. Khara, with a very broad, a bit of a sweeping topic, question on what do you think have been the big learnings for the banking sector from the 8 months or 9 months of lockdown and semi-lockdown that we have seen?
First of all, very good afternoon to you, Mr. Sriram. And of course, I think the pandemic is actually a biggest teacher, if I may say so. It's not only for the humanity, but also for various commercial establishments across the globe. Having said that, I would like to mention that there are two major things which have happened in the BFSI sector. One, of course, is a lot of focus and the sharper focus for the digital distribution, which, of course, as far as we at State Bank of India are concerned, we were making some headways even earlier also. But I think it actually gained pace during COVID. And adoption of the digital became quite strong during the period of this pandemic. The second very important piece is the way we used to look at the risk management. And see, what has happened is that people started perceiving risk. The visibility of the risk was very clear. Visibility of risk actually made people very, very careful. So there was a much better appreciation of risk. And naturally, when there was an appreciation of risk, adequate risk mitigants were also thought about. So these are the two very major important things. Apart from that, in the past, we used to have focus for ensuring that there's always a BCP, which means that the business continuity plan. But in those business continuity plan, we never envisaged a situation that the human being would not be accessible in such situations. So I think the very premise on which BCP was envisaged was essentially with an understanding that human beings are always available. But I think in the pandemic, we have seen that there may be situations when human beings are unable to reach out to the BCP locations, and such situation, how do we really carry out the operations? So that was, I think, one of the major learning, and we in financial sector almost picked up those skills almost on the go, and implemented those and could see to it that the operation remains uninterrupted, and we're in a position to serve our customers without fail. So that is something which we have. I think these are the biggest learning of the pandemic for the BFSI sector.
Very important points, Mr. Khara. Thank you very much for this. So I'll just take up on the issue of digital banking or digitization. I see your digital app, YONO, figuring very prominently in the in the cutout behind you. What is the future of banking in general as we have known it, and how much of a big disruptive role that digital banking is really going to play? I mean, are we going to see a lot of, like for a bank like yours, which is SBI, the biggest bank in the country, how much of business is really going to be transacted, you think, through digital banking, and are you going to really need bank branches at all?
For a bank like ours, which has got a reach across the country and also has got very varied customer base, I think physical is going to be the solution. It is not merely the digital, or it's not merely physical. I think the channel choice will depend upon the customers, depending upon the age group they are in, depending upon the location where they are. And I think it will actually be very much driven by the customer's choice. But as far as we as bank are concerned, we will have to focus on phygital as a strategy when it comes to the distribution. So when I say so phygital, there would also be situation that for certain services, people might prefer to come to the branches. But in general, for the transaction related services, they will all depend upon the digital. All the commoditized products and the services will probably get rolled out through the digital, and it will be as per the convenience of the customer at a particular point of time, depending. They will not be guided by the bank's official timing. They will be guided by their convenience, and accordingly, they will reach out and consume those services. So having said that, I would also like to mention for a bank like ours, we have a situation where almost about 93% of our transactions are happening outside the branches, which means that people are either using ATMs, or they are using the online banking, or they are using the app-based banking like YONO. So that is something which we have seen, and we have also increasingly seen the lesser and lesser users of ATMs and increased users of the digital per se. So I think that is going to be the trend going forward. Perhaps cash, lesser and lesser cash will be put to use for the banking purposes. It's going to be more and more digital. Increasing usage of app like the services like QR, UPay, etc. More and more they are becoming popular. More and more adoption of the digital is increasing. I think that is what the trend we are visualizing.
Great. Mr. Khara, what would be the implications for banks like yours, whether it's a big bank like SBI or a smaller private sector bank? What would be the implications on costs as banks really go more and more focus on digital, and consumers also use the digital banking modes, whether it's online banking or apps, to transact? I suppose we are going to see a situation where you are going to need fewer branches, or invest in fewer branches, or invest in fewer ATMs. The cost implications can be huge, isn't it, sir?
Yeah, I agree with you. And that is why we will have to probably readjust to the new cost paradigm. The branches may not continue to be in the same shape and color as they are in the current situation. Probably, as I visualize the situation, branches will be more place for seeking some advice. So branches may not be used as much for the transactions. And as you're aware that when it comes to the penetration level of various other financial sector products, the penetration in the economy is still very low. And in many respects, I would say that the large distribution like ours offers something like a blue ocean strategy for us when it comes to distribution of our other products like, the life insurance, the general insurance, the credit card, the mutual fund. So these are the kind of products which have yet to gain currency in the hinterland of the country. And there is enough potential which is available for a bank like ours, with a brand name like ours, which actually is resonate to the trust which our large customer base has actually demonstrated. I would say that it's a huge opportunity, and having created this branch network, we'll have a huge opportunity to scale up the distribution of the products of all other subsidiaries which are into the manufacturing of various other financial products. So I think apart from that, even in the banking also, there would be opportunities where, when it comes to the advisory services, etc., they will probably get rolled out from the branches as compared to the transaction-based services, which are as of now getting rolled out from the branches.
Right. One important point you mentioned in your opening answer is the issue of risk and how the banking sector has really learned to adjust to and reorient itself towards really taking care of risk. A complaint from industry has been that not enough credit has been flowing to some sections of the industry, like for instance, small and medium businesses or certain other kind of businesses are really not. It's only the big guys who are getting the money, and the small and the medium guys are really not getting the money. What is your view, sir?
No, here I would like to place before you a data point, which is essentially relating to the utilization of the credit limits.
Sure.
So when it comes to the mid-corporate, essentially what we have seen is that their capacity utilization, working capital utilization is somewhere around 75 to 80%. So there was still a gap of over 20%, even in the mid-corporate sector also. And when it comes to the large corporate, the working capital utilization was as low as about 40%.
Right.
So to my mind, this is when it comes to the credit offtake, this is also a function of the demand. And perhaps on the one side, the demand gets catered with the help of our retail loans, which actually gives the purchasing power in the hand of all the consumers. So there we have seen a significant growth, almost about 14 to 15% kind of a growth, which we have seen in the retail loan side. So which means that enough cash is being put in the hands of consumers so that they're in a position to consume and also create and generate demand also. But when we started looking at the working capital utilization, that was actually much below what we would have expected. So I think perhaps increasing demand will also some kind of a certainty in terms of the flow of income will also give a push to the demand, which eventually will get reflected to the better working capital utilization. Also, it will perhaps show up in the better capacity utilization. So I think as of now, the capacity utilization in the economy is somewhere around 70%.
Right.
When it comes to investment credit demand, that actually comes in when people start thinking about new projects, people start thinking in terms of adding new capacities. That kind of a situation perhaps starts emerging once the capacity utilization reaches somewhere around 80%. Then we start evaluating those kind of options. So I think having said that, maybe we'll certainly get to see that kind of a situation when as we are seeing the improvement in the demand, maybe going forward it will get further strengthened, and that will be perhaps a point of time when we'll get to see more investment demand. And I think that's also a point of time when perhaps we will have a better credit offtake also could be the economy.
Sure. Do you see investment demand really picking up in FY22? Do you think we will reach a situation where
I expect that, because to my mind, maybe corporates who are having adequate scope for leverage, they would be, I expect that the demand will really come back, and post-COVID, and most likely I'm expecting something like a V-shaped kind of a recovery. When it comes with the V-shaped kind of a recovery, demand comes back with the V-shaped kind of a recovery, there will be the demand for more capacity. And I think that will be a point of time when probably we'll get to see recovery of the investment demand. And perhaps, as you mentioned, hopefully we'll get to see that in the year 22.
And do you think retail loans and retail banking products will continue to dominate the flow?
I think there is an ample opportunity for the retail book to grow. And also I would like to bring in another fact.
Sure.
The other fact is that, the way the lifestyle is changing, the way the middle class is growing in the economy, these are the other contributing factors which will lead to a situation where retail will get a further boost. So I think I'm quite hopeful for the retail to continue to grow.
Sure. The RBI restructuring package that was announced a couple of months back now, I think banks are slowly starting to roll out the restructuring packages. By January, February, all of that should be done. There was a fair bit of concern in the market about the fact that this will weigh heavily on banks' earnings, but we saw in the second quarter results that it didn't really affect banks' earnings so much. The commentary was actually a little more buoyant and a little more positive from many banks, including yours. What is if I were to ask you to look at a crystal ball and say over the next year or so, how much of these, what is the future for restructuring, and how much of your book will actually get into the restructuring, and what is your view on whether this will be sustainable or not?
See, proactively, there's an attempt on the part of the bank to identify the kind of a stress which is sitting in various accounts. And for that, invariably, we are looking at the business model of our various entities and also the kind of a cash flow situation which is there. So based on that, we are making our assessment, what is the health of the unit. And based upon that, if at all there is a visibility of the cash flow, there is a certainty of the business model, and certain temporary aberrations are only seen on the ground, then we are, of course, we go by the judgment and the call taken by the enterprise. But if at all we get to see that either the business model is not in order, or the industry is not performing well, or the cash flow is under stress, we are proactively we are guiding such kind of corporates to, or rather, if I may say so, we are encouraging them to either go for the restructuring or avail the kind of packages which have been made available. So I think it is in the interest of the corporate as well as of the bank to look at the possibilities wherever the help can be rendered in terms of the regulatory norms which have been or the regulatory relaxations which have been provided. So we are encouraging the corporates to look at these options. Having said that, I must also mention that the things have perhaps changed. When corporates are more into responsible leveraging, they are not really resorting to bank as the first point where they should reach out for any kind of a mitigation for their stress. They are rather trying out all options and resorting to availing these packages only as a last resort. So that is something which is also seen. So I think a mix of the kind of experience which corporates have, and also the law of the land which has come into existence in terms of insolvency, etc., which was not there in the past. So the leverage by the corporates is, I would say, is more responsible now as compared to perhaps as it was in the year 2008.
Right. Thank you.